Well, hey there, it's Tony again from the Portsmouth Aeroship Building Company with Unpacking Diesel Punk, where we take this genre that we love, which is diesel punk, and try to make it just a little bit easier to understand. So I'm your host. You may know me from my endeavors over at the Portsmouth Aeroship Building Company, and I wanted to get everybody together just to see what questions you have about the genre diesel punk. Now, I always like, or at least have these last couple of episodes, like to start off with at least my definition of diesel punk, and I define it as diesel punk is a method of creativity that combines the historic style of the mid-1910s to the mid-1950s with elements of sci-fi, fantasy, and even horror. And that definition and that part of that definition helps ties to today's question, because we're going to entertain a question from Grace Robinson. Grace, hope you're out there. Hello. And Grace's question is, most diesel punk seems to involve robots, alternate history, and or large-scale war. And you're correct. It does. We see that a lot in diesel punk. But Grace also asked, do you consider a story diesel punk if it doesn't have these elements? When is a diesel punk story no longer actually diesel punk? Well, thank you for your question, Grace. And I want to start off with your question, or address your question this way. In fact, when I heard your question, it made me think of a couple of examples of a few of my favorite movies that actually would be classified as diesel punk, but guess what? They don't have those things that you mentioned. They don't have robots. They don't have, you can consider it alternate history, but it does not have large-scale war, robots, and the things that you see a lot of in kind of like mainstream diesel punk. And the first example I want to start off with is a movie that came out a few years ago, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, starring Eddie Redmayne. And that, as you may recall, is an offshoot of the Harry Potter series. But it actually does take place in 1926. And because of that era, and it is a beautiful movie, especially the look and the feel of it, because you can just watch that movie with the sound off and just look at it visually, and it is so appealing, especially to someone like myself who's an illustrator. But that is again what they do. They use those elements, the historic style, as I mentioned in my definition, the historic style, the architecture, of course, the attire, even down to, and I think this is really important, even down to the hairstyles and the haircuts of the men. I mean, it does tie into that era of the 1920s. The twist that they put in there, which makes it diesel punk and not a historic piece, is that it deals with magic and fantasy. And so that's what makes it diesel punk, at least according to me. But what do you guys think? I think that is a great example of diesel punk, where they don't have the robots, they don't have large-scale war, but it happens to take place in that era, and it's got that twist of fantasy in it. Let's move down the timeline a little bit more, Grace, and let's look at 1933, and this is where Peter Jackson's King Kong takes place. And again, that is one of my favorites, not only one of my favorite movies in general, but one of my favorite diesel punk movies. And I'll tell you why it's one of my favorites, because with me being a lover of nostalgia, especially from the 30s and 40s, and with the music and the look and feel, and someone that loves sci-fi and horror, when Peter Jackson did his depiction of King Kong, and when he said it back in that era, I was elated. And then the look and feel of it, especially when they go back to New York City and they just have the visuals there, and that twist of horror where you got the monster, King Kong, that's what makes it diesel punk. And there's no robots, no large-scale war, no Nazis in this, but it is an example of diesel punk where the twist that makes it the punk, I consider, is the horror element. That is all the monsters on Skull Island, and of course King Kong himself. One last example, Grace, that I'd like to use, and let's move the timeline a little bit further down in the years. Let's look at the year. The year is 1947, And we are in 1947 LA. That is actually right beside a little place called Toontown. Yes, I am talking about, this is one that folks didn't even realize was Diesel Punk, but yes, Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Now, y'all settle down, absorb that, take that in, because that's something that when you think about Diesel Punk movies, that's probably the last one that comes to mind, but hear me out. It takes place in the era between World War I, World War II, so it takes place in 1947, so of course a little after World War II, but it takes place in 1947, and so because of that, it uses the historic style of the era, the architecture, but especially the costume and the clothing, the cars and all of that screams the 1940s when you look at it visually. Now, the twist in there, the punk that makes it Diesel Punk, is the fantasy element of the tunes living with real live people in this entire movie. And so again, that makes it actually a Diesel Punk movie. So what do you guys think? Grace, I hope that answers your question. I hope I gave you some good examples there, but I'm not the guru and I don't know it all. So I want to hear from you guys as far as what do you think about my examples, and what do you think about Grace's question? Feel free to post your comments, and in addition to posting your comments, I've got some more of these original bicycle playing cards designed with our Portsmouth Aeroship Building Company look and feel. Let me put that so you can see that a little bit. There we go, with the logo look and feel there. And all you need to do in order to get one of these is you'll be in the running for, I'll pick a winner of those that have posted a question that we can use in an upcoming episode. So hope you're enjoying these little episodes that we're putting together. If you are enjoying these, then I will do more. I want to get your questions. We may even, if we go longer with this, we may even invite some folks to join us in one of these episodes. But I hope you're enjoying this. And Grace, I hope I answered your question. So we will see you next time on Unpacking Diesel Punk. Take care.